Today, we're diving into the GPT-5 model from OpenAI. I will show you the proven techniques to get the most out of GPT-5 based on my extensive testing and analysis of hundreds of developer experiences to turn it into a real force multiplier. Watch this video till the end to see my conversation with Dominik, an engineer from OpenAI, where he shares his thoughts and tips on tech careers in the age of AI. When GPT-5 launched, the community split into two camps. One half shared that, in their experience, it was performing worse than previous models. The other half reported massive productivity gains. I tested GPT-5 myself on various projects. I analyzed OpenAI's new official prompting guide and reviewed the feedback from hundreds of developers. It all comes down to a fundamental shift in how you approach the model. Stay tuned to learn how to get the most out of GPT-5. Let's look at a few nuances around GPT-5 release. First, GPT-5 was released in three main end-user variations: GPT-5, GPT-5 Thinking, and GPT-5 Pro. In the API, we have GPT-5, GPT-5 Mini, and GPT-5 Nano, with the trade-offs around some general world knowledge for lower cost and lower latency. Developers get different experiences with each of those. And most feedback you see is from developers who tested GPT-5 or GPT-5 Thinking, not the GPT Pro. Second reason is it really matters how you prompt GPT-5, how you organize the mission, the success criteria, context, and tools. You will get really different results depending on how you adjust your prompt. And the third reason is the new adjustment options for reasoning effort and verbosity. They bring more steerability, but also affect the quality of the result, so leaving it as default isn't always the best. The only way for you to get a good sense of GPT-5 or any new model is to use it. But in this video, I will save you a lot of time and share some of the techniques and tips that you can apply. It all comes down to understanding GPT-5's new architecture, its configuration options, and using the right techniques. The most important thing to understand about GPT-5 is that it works best when you give it a mission, specific definition of success, and your structured criteria. The Cursor team discovered this early. In their experience, GPT-5 is one of the most steerable models, but they need to be more explicit about what they were trying to accomplish. When things were left vague, the model took a different direction than expected. When they were more specific, they were surprised by how smart the model was in itself, and I agree with that. One of my favorite sources, Latent Space, shared that GPT-5 was able to solve dependency conflicts that stumped every other model. But the key was in how a request was formulated. With a clear mission and complete autonomy, the model was able to be smart about choosing when to execute versus when to think when it found something that didn't add up. Here are some of the examples of the prompts that worked really well with GPT-5, where it was able to generate a fully functional solution in one shot. Because this is a more intelligent model, on one hand, we need less of the generic warning style instructions in the prompt, like be thorough or maximize thinking time. And on the other hand, we need more mission-driven formulation of goals, starting context for it to work with, without overloading it with context, and the tools it can work with. I love the analogy of the compass, like giving it this agent a compass, clear, structured pointers that will help it navigate the environment that you put it in. Now, on the model behind the scenes, GPT-5 is not GPT-4o with better benchmarks. GPT-5 uses mixture of models. OpenAI describes it as a unified system with a smart, efficient model that answers most questions, a deeper reasoning model, GPT-5 Thinking for harder problems, and a real-time router that quickly decides which one to use based on conversation type, complexity, tool needs, and your explicit intent. Previous models required us to prompt for step-by-step reasoning, and GPT-5 has this chain of thought integrated. When it encounters complex problems, it automatically generates internal reasoning traces with self-corrections and justifications. Another element that is new in GPT-5 that significantly affects its results and performance is the new API parameters, like verbosity and reasoning effort. The verbosity parameter controls the response length independently of reasoning depth. We can set it to low for concise status updates and high for detailed generation. We can use low verbosity globally with prompt level overrides per code generation, and this gives us efficient status messages combined with highly readable code. The reasoning effort parameter now includes minimal for latency-sensitive applications. Most developers use the default for everything, but now we can use minimal for boilerplate code, low for standard features, medium for business logic, high or complex architectural decisions. In the prompt optimization guide, there are specific best practices for prompting for more eagerness or less eagerness. The key is learning how to calibrate it between taking initiative and waiting for explicit guidance. By default, GPT-5 is thorough and comprehensive, sometimes too much so when it makes excessive tool calls or explores tangential paths. Here is how we can dial down eagerness. We can switch to lower reasoning effort for faster results. We can define clear exploration criteria. For example, get enough context fast, start broad, then focus. Stop when you can name exact content to change or when 70% of results converge. For maximum control, we can also set tool call budgets. For example, limit the number of tool calls that it does and bias towards quick answers, even if not fully correct. We can also give it permission to proceed under uncertainty instead of endless searching. On the contrary, to increase eagerness in its autonomous operation, we can increase reasoning effort and use this persistence pattern. You're an agent, keep going until completely resolved. Never stop at uncertainty, research, and continue. Don't ask for confirmation, make reasonable assumptions, and document them. We can also define different risk thresholds and calibrate each tool's autonomy based on potential impact. You might notice that there is a lot of feedback on how GPT-5 is better at building entire applications from a single prompt. And there is a technique to help with that. Instead of just describing what we want, we can ask GPT-5 to create its own excellence rubric first, and then build against those standards. This self-reflection approach relies on GPT-5's thorough planning capabilities. The model essentially becomes its own quality assurance and creates benchmarks and then iterates until it meets them. One of the other differences of GPT-5 is in how it handles contradictory instructions in prompts, and this catches most developers off guard. Simple, common contradictions like prefer standard library when it's followed by use external packages of simpler may cause GPT-5 to use a lot of reasoning tokens trying to reconcile conflicting points. This is something we need to keep in mind when designing prompts. One thing you can do is use OpenAI's new prompt optimizer tool to identify these contradictions. We can also use GPT-5 itself as a meta prompter to understand what minimal edits to the prompt would encourage the most consistent performance. I want to share the repository that you should know about. OpenAI released GPT-5 coding examples with applications GPT-5 built in single prompts. If you want to get the most out of GPT-5, you need to look at these patterns because they reveal the exact starting specifications that work. They show complete prompts with technical requirements, aesthetic guidelines, target audiences in the comprehensive missions. So to summarize these techniques, GPT-5 works best with specific, well-structured missions And when developers adjust the new verbosity and reasoning effort parameters to control output style and eagerness for speed versus autonomy, and avoid contradictory instructions. Make sure to study the patterns in the OpenAI's GPT-5 coding examples repo and also the new prompting guide. Now, let's hear the interview with Dominik from OpenAI, where we discuss tips for engineers on their careers in the age of AI.
Junior developers are kind of terrified about, their jobs being eliminated. Mm-hmm. What would be your advice to junior developers right now for how can they stand out and be on a good career path in tech?
I think one, definitely familiarize yourself with the tools that are available and get really good at using them, because I think for a lot of senior developers, it's not like they're familiar with these tools, right? We're all learning the tools right now. And so you actually have an advantage there where you're not locked into the way you've always been doing things. It took me some intentionality to be okay, I'm going to actively try to use these tools for a bit, to really start to appreciate them and leverage them. So learn all the tools that are available. But also don't shy away to talk to senior engineers and ask for guidance and help. I think one of the things that I'm most concerned about is the more senior you are, normally the tasks that you would delegate to a junior engineer, you can now give to AI. So try to make sure that you stay engaged with senior engineers to get guidance from them, hopefully learn from them, get tasks from them, rather than just sort of trying to work on your own on things.
If AI makes every developer 10x more productive, does that mean that we're going to need 10 times less developers?
I don't think so. I think it will probably change how we work. But for me, it's always been at least personally, the reason why I became a developer was because I had a lot of ideas and I wanted to turn them into reality. And I think a lot of developers feel that way. And what for a lot of developers, the job turned out to be was fixing bugs and working off a backlog. And I found this myself just now working on the agents SDK. I delegated a lot of the tasks that I didn't want to do to Codex to work in the background on them for me. And I could focus on the things that I actually cared about and the things that I really wanted to tweak to my likeness, to my liking. And that I think is going to drastically change. There's so much demand for software. And I think it's actually going to empower more people to be able to build more things rather than we're going to build the same amount of things with fewer people.
Speaking of Codex, what percentage of pull requests does Codex close for you?
It's hard to say the percentage. We had running up. So in the last week and a half or something, we really doubled down on using Codex before the launch. We had 103 pull requests merged. And I think we asked 260 tasks to Codex. But it's hard to compare it because it's always an apples to oranges.
Yeah.
I know that we would have not been able to ship at that quality level. A good example of this is I would ask once a day, I would ask Codex to just go and find 3 bugs in this part of the code base. And it would open suggested fixes to them, including tests and stuff. And one of the things that felt good to me was the day before launch, I asked the same question again and it found 3 typos. And that felt really good to me because it wasn't okay, there's no blaringly, no super obvious problems that need to be fixed.
You mentioned you worked on the agents SDK too, right?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of different agent frameworks, and many of them are so similar. They offer, define agents, pick a model, select tools, do a reasoning. How does a developer pick one for their use case amongst all of them?
I think you should pick what seems to resonate with you. It's sort of the same as web frameworks, right? Where I think people are afraid that they're permanently locked into one framework, and get decision paralysis just from that. And I think like that by itself is problematic because like you're really only going to learn whether a framework works or doesn't work for you if you actually try it out. So like if something works, like read the documentation of the frameworks you're considering and then weigh off like, does this kind of align with how I'm thinking about this? I think the big thing with all of this right now is like AI is changing so fast anyways. Chances are you have to rewrite something, or something gets outdated. So like, it's more important that you build something than that you're like getting lost on like what framework is the best one. Like use the one that gets your solution fastest out of the door so you can learn from users.
What is it like to work at OpenAI, and how is it different from working at other companies out there?
It's fascinating to see sort of like all of the creation and how quickly we're building things, and like also having like a glimpse into the future and like being able to like try out things that haven't been released yet. I really appreciate all the like dog fooding we're doing internally. So that's been really fascinating. I think the thing that's different is one, like Greg Brockman talked about this, like the real connection between like research and applied, like the teams that actually then turn that into products, and then also seeing sort of solution architects and sales engineers like working closely with research then to like bring the customer feedback back into like improving the models. Like that is really cool to see. I think also the other thing is just like the level of like agency and ownership that we give to individuals, like DRIs, so designated responsible individuals, is like a really key part of what we do, where like one person is really like gets the agency to move projects forward.
If you were to give advice to somebody who wants to work at OpenAI as an engineer, how would you recommend for them to like prep for interviews? Like what kind of skills do you think are most important to be considered a good employee at OpenAI?
It's a good question. I think like the common pattern that I see with folks is like their curiosity but also their like technical skill sets, or like the skills that they have in their field of expertise, right? So like everyone brings like something to the table that they're like incredible at. So like really understanding what are the things that you're really good at is something that I think is going to be helpful.
Do you think the interview process needs to change going forward? A lot of companies are doing lead code problems. They're asking the standard questions about algorithms and data structures. Do you see it changing in the future, or do you think it still works for what we need?
I feel like with so many things with like AI is going to change how we need to evaluate things, right? Like, it's the same thing with like education, for example, like, trying to really figure out what are the things, what are the skill sets that you actually need for your job, and how do you assess those is something that you should constantly reevaluate. Like, I think like algorithms might become more relevant, less relevant. Like, I think it really depends on sort of what your company is trying to hire for.
I hope you enjoyed the interview and useful GPT-5 techniques. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
Your reality has changed. You're stuck in your career. You're either using AI or being used. Do you still believe success is guaranteed? You feel it's time to wake up. Old strategies don't work anymore. Welcome to the real world. It will never be the same again. You need to fight for your future. Learn to spot truth from lies. I will help you. Together, we will win.